us on Across the Fence. I'm Jolene Whitney. I'm excited because today I get to host my very first bird notes. So here we go. The bears are hopefully hibernating this time of year, which means it's time to get those bird feeders out and invite the birds on back. Joining me for bird notes this month, as he does every month, is conservation biologist Mark LaBarr from Audubon, Vermont. Thank you for talking with me this afternoon, Mark.
Great to have you sitting across the table from you. This is fun. I get to, there's been a number of different hosts that have been on and hosted bird notes. And the question that I ask them often when I first meet them is, are you a bird watcher?
Well, I used to be a bird watcher, and now I can't say I do it very much, but if I see a bird, I won't look away.
Okay,
but
that's good.
I'm
that's
excited
all right.
to hopefully learn something today.
All right, check.
All right.
So, because what we're going to talk about today is a great way for people to get, kind of introduced to birds.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, maybe I'll implement some feeder knowledge after today.
Great.
So, as we were talking, some bears are hopefully taking a long nap for the winter. Is that true? Is it really safe to put bird feeders out?
So the time that the state recommends for putting bird feeders out is December 1, and that usually allows the bears to kind of check in or check out, as I may say, so you don't have conflicts with seed being out and them looking for food. So December 1, but then feeders can come out and supply a lot of food for a lot of our winter birds.
All right, so let's take a look at some of those feeders you mentioned.
So the tube feeder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, this is our standard feeder that you see out there. With some of the seed that you see is it looks like a lot of black oil sunflower seed, probably the most popular seed among birds that come to feeders. They're easy, they fill up easy, they're easy to clean. So tube feeders are a great starter feeder. They do have limitations in that they attract just the smaller birds because the perches are often small. And so some of the larger birds jays and cardinals can't quite get on those. But chickadees, finches, like we just saw, perfect feeder for that.
All right, and you mentioned blue jays, and I think we have a photo here of a frequent flyer coming in.
So blue jays, this is a platform feeder. You can see it has a much bigger place for these larger birds to perch on, and gives birds a place to go to feed. But again, bluebirds are a little contentious because you provide them with food and you'll get a whole bunch of them that'll come in.
Yeah, give an inch, take a mile.
Yes, they will. Another bird that frequents a platform feeder that may not go to a tube feeder is your cardinals. Again, if you want to have a diversity of feeders up, a tube feeder, a platform feeder are always good choices.
All right, and if I'm looking to get a cardinal in my backyard, is there a seed in particular they prefer?
So cardinals, again, black oil sunflower seeds are pretty popular amongst everybody. Cardinals will eat safflower seeds. There are some mixes that are specific to cardinals that you can find in stores. But again, if you stick with black oil sunflower seed, you're bound to get a whole bunch of different species that really like that one.
All right, and moving on to a different kind of feed, we have a photo of some chickadees hanging out on a suet feeder.
Right, so suet's another great food source, high fat, high energy. These are black-capped chickadees, and they're feeding on a funky suet feeder that's got suet mixed with seed, but oftentimes you'll find it just in a straight-up block of suet. And that just provides food for species like the chickadees. Another bird or group of birds that like the suet feeders that won't be eating seeds are the woodpeckers. So here we have another fancy suet ring, holiday season with a downy woodpecker on it. And so again, diversifying what you're feeding the birds brings in more different species, downy woodpeckers, hairy woodpeckers, and even now, there are some new birds showing up on the horizon, like the red-breasted woodpecker. So get your suet feeders out there with your seed feeders as well.
All right, and for those of us who are maybe rusty on our bird feeders, can you tell me about what suet even is?
So suet's just basically fat. It's rendered fat, that you can buy in blocks. You can also buy it at the food store as, just suet. But it's a little unwieldy, and if you try to make your own suet things, make sure you kind of do it outside because it can get a little bit stinky. But in the wild, say a deer or a moose died, plenty of fat on that thing, and the birds might take advantage of that in the wild. But we supply it for them on our porches.
All right. And our next photo, I believe, is of a white-breasted nuthatch. Can you tell me about that?
So this is another bird that likes the suet feeders, the upside down birds, okay? Because normally you see them just like this going down a tree. They feed a lot on insects, but again, this is another species that'll come into the suet feeder, along with its cousin, the red-breasted nuthatch. And depending where you live, white-breasted nuthatches tend to like deciduous hardwood forests. Red-breasted nuthatches, you get some pines in there, some hemlocks. You were mentioning you come from the Northeast Kingdom, so you're more than likely to see a red-breasted nuthatch up there where you get a lot of spruce and everything like that.
All right. And our next photo, I think, is of a thistle feeder.
Yeah, so this is another feeder that you can put out, which is a thistle feeder. Thistle is very, very small seed, but there's a group of birds, such as our American goldfinch, which like the thistle. Another one is the pine siskin, which will come in and take advantage of the thistle cedar. And those feeders have a really narrow slit in there so that the seed comes out one at a time. You put thistle in a regular feeder, it's going to be all over your porch or your yard. But it does, again, attract another group of birds that you might not have at your feeder if you didn't have a thistle feeder up.
And as any bird feeder knows, there is something maybe that doesn't fly that comes by the bird feeders every once in a while, of course, squirrels.
So squirrels, you know, we talk about squirrels. Squirrels are good. I got to give squirrels a lot of credit. Even a feeder like this, which is a tube feeder, which supposedly is squirrel-proof. We've had some of these before, and we've had some squirrels that actually managed to get inside that little cage. And so there's feeders that spin the squirrels around, and you know, all sorts of different things to keep the squirrels out. And a lot of people, what they'll do is, instead of fighting the squirrels, they'll, you know, provide food for the squirrels to use cheaper, so that the birds get the more expensive black oil sunflower seeds, and the squirrels can eat their corn and, you know, and do it that way. So you keep the squirrels happy, you keep the birds happy.
And you mentioned corn. Is that the best thing to get to keep a squirrel busy?
Oftentimes, if you go in and you're looking at food, they'll have squirrel feeders that have a corn cob or something like that the squirrel can take advantage of. And if, you know, again, if you put that up, you know, somewhere a little distance from your feeders, they'll hopefully focus on that and not on your bird feeders, and keep the birds away.
All right, and of course it's almost Thanksgiving, which means December is right around the corner. Can you tell me a little bit about the December bird, or the Christmas bird count?
So the Christmas bird count is coming up. It is a count that's been, I think it's more than 120 years old. And over the course of December, from mid-December through the beginning of January, there are different counts that are being held all over the state, where folks go out and try to count as many different birds as they can, often visiting feeder sites. And then all of that data goes to the National Audubon Society, where community scientists like these Christmas bird count folks can, their data can be collected and used by scientists.
All right, and if I'm a novice birder trying to get more into it, what feeders do you recommend starting off with?
I would say a tube feeder's your best bet, because at least with a tube feeder, again, they're easy to clean. And it's a 4-to-1 bleach ratio, and you want to make sure you do that maybe once a month. Keep those bird feeders clean, so there isn't disease that can be transferred from bird to bird as they come to the feeders. You should clean them at the end of the year, and clean them before you put them out as well.
All right, and if I'm birding on a budget, so to speak, what should I expect to pay for birding?
So birding or bird feeding?
Bird feeding, of
So
course.
bird feeding, so again, the tube feeders tend to be, you know, cheaper in nature. Some of the feeders are very extravagant, and they can be quite pricey, made of brass and all sorts of things like that. But you can get a simple plastic tube feeder, you know, I don't know what they're going for these days, but it's the cheapest, usually the cheapest one out there. And it's going to be a feeder that, if you do use good seed, that's a seed that is high in black oil sunflower seed or striped sunflower seeds, you'll attract a good number of birds. And again, if you can add a cheap suet feeder along with that, you're going to bring in those woodpeckers and nuthatches, and you'll get more activity at your feeder.
And recently in the news, there's been some stories about renaming some birds named after people to scrapping that altogether.
Yeah, so that's a process that's going to be coming on soon, and the American Ornithological Society is going to be rethinking some of these bird names to be more descriptive of what the bird is, as opposed to, say, having a person's name in front of it. So that process is just starting. We're kind of anxious to see what new names we're going to have to learn as we move forward, being a bird watcher, and yeah, quite exciting.
All right, thank you so much for joining me today. If you have a bird-related question, you can pass it along to Mark at the address on your screen, or you can drop it to Mark in his email. His address is mlabarr@audubon.org. Send Mark your questions and your pictures, and he'll find answers for you, and you might even be featured on an upcoming edition of Bird Notes. Our thanks to everyone behind the scenes here at WCAX who make this program possible. If you'd like to watch more Bird Notes programs, visit our social media channels on YouTube and Facebook by searching Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. Have a good one.